Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Growthentic podcast with Shane and myself. This is episode 21.
Yeah, hey everybody, welcome to episode 21. This is going to be one you're going to hang on from start to finish because we come full circle. We start out recapping Sam's recent finish of the New York City Marathon trials, tribulations. Through that, we kind of transition it over into the difference between planning and performing, and how when you get into the battle, you get into the project, a lot of times the plan goes out the window, but that planning is so critical. After that, we go through our usual area where we talk about AI integration into the business, some really key frameworks and concepts around business process mapping, identifying areas where AI can actually benefit your business and how to hone in on those, as well as the theory of constraints to make sure that where you are investing time, effort, energy, and creating systems, it's actually going to benefit your business, the bottom line, the top line. And from there, we go in and bring it up full circle and round it out with a little bit of entrepreneurship straight into prepping and my ramp up heading into my marathon on this coming Sunday. And there you go, full circle. It's a really great episode. Lots of good information, valuable insights there from fitness, AI, and the entrepreneurship side of things. So hope you enjoy it and feel free to reach out, give us a subscribe and a like.
Thank you all. Hello, hello.
All right. Hey, Sam, how's it going?
Going good, man. How are you doing?
Amazing. It's Friday. Always enjoy this part of my Friday afternoon, getting together, catching up, talking life, business, growth, development. And I think a good place to start this week is probably going to be a really big milestone and achievement on your side with finishing the marathon. And I know I'm curious, and I'm sure others out there are curious on kind of biggest takeaways, how you're feeling afterwards, mentally, emotionally, physically, and just walk us through that.
How I felt. Marathon day is absolutely special. Living in New York, I've experienced it from the spectator's end.
Okay.
Um, But man, when you're inside the ropes and you're running it, you almost feel like an athlete, like coming out of the tunnel, like into the court, high-fiving people. You've got like fans everywhere. It kind of felt like that. Um,
Amazing.
but yeah, I don't think I can really put into words how electric and special that day felt. But if I can try to capture it, imagine spending close to 2 years, a boatload of time, a lot of injuries, and a lot of ups and downs, and all kind of combining into this like 4 to 5 hour period in time where everyone is cheering for you and for all of the runners as
Hmm.
a form of like, you've done it. You've done everything you needed to do to arrive on the start line. And whatever happens over the course of the 26.2 miles, it almost doesn't matter. Like that was like the resounding, like emotional feeling that I had
Hmm.
leading up and even during the race itself. Um, I think this week after the marathon ended, I heard about the post marathon blues a lot.
Mm.
And it's kind of a real thing. I think because for 2 years, at least for me, it was 2 years because I had to do all of these qualifying events in 2023,
Wow.
in 2024. Um, and then this year was, just kind of like my main training leading up to
Hmm.
the marathon. It was this almost 2 year journey. And for that to then be completely gone in a matter of a day, it felt weird. Um, and I didn't run at all this week. I didn't do any workouts this week just to give my body and my mind a full kind of reset. It felt
Hmm.
very, very strange. But now I'm kind of turning the corner and starting to think about, all right, what is my next kind of physical endeavor? It doesn't always have to be a race or a competition, but it can be personal goals. So I'm starting to think about what that looks like for me. But man, like mentally, there were some blues, but physically, what was really astonishing is that the first day after, in a lot of pain. But the next day after, the amount of pain that went away was so drastic and so unexpected.
Wow.
This might sound stupid, but when I ran the marathon like 5 years ago with minimal training, that level of pain stayed with me for like a week. Big shocker. But I think the amount of training not only helped me perform the way that well, not the way that I wanted to, but perform at a decent capacity on marathon day, but it also helps with how quickly you recover post
Hmm.
marathon, which I thought was a really interesting learning as well, and kind of applicable to a lot of things in life as well. It's not just about the performance that you're training for, it's the learnings and the takeaways after that that the preparation has a lot to do with. So yeah, that's kind of a short way to sum up how I felt both physically and mentally this week. But man, all in all, what an incredible experience. If you or anybody listening has the opportunity to either run for a charity or run qualifying events, to run the New York City Marathon or at that any world major marathon, I would absolutely encourage you to do so. You won't regret it.
Oh, that's awesome. I have like so many questions about it, but I would focus in on um I guess right out of the gate, my first question is your target time versus your actual time, and how did you feel about that and reconcile it with training? Because obviously you have like your training pace and your training course, and that has a certain rhythm to it, but then you have a lot more adrenaline on race day, and the course is different. Probably most people aren't running that every single day training on it. So like what was your experience like with that, and then kind of your KPIs and your performance?
Yeah, well, what I realized was that my training intensity was absolutely there. Like I was doing all the right things, but I think I just didn't have enough volume.
Hmm.
And, that could be me, I guess looking back at it, maybe I could have ran just simply more every single week or ramped up my volume in the last 3 to 4 months of my training.
Hmm.
But prior to that, I was never really a runner. I was just a
Hmm.
recreational runner, not thinking about miles, just going for the kind of mental boost,
Hmm.
the physical gains, and just, going out for a run as a
Hmm.
normal person would. But I think the lack of volume really showed out in my performance. Um, Now, aside from that, I dealt with a lot of injuries earlier this year,
Hmm.
specifically around IT band syndrome,
Hmm.
and I thought I had fixed it. But
Hmm.
what I didn't realize was I fixed it to a certain degree in terms of mileage. So when I did
Hmm.
my long runs up until like 16, 18, 19 miles, my IT band was perfectly fine. But
Wow.
when I ran the race, which was so much more hilly than any kind of regular
Oh,
track that I go on, um,
interesting. I wouldn't have guessed that in the New York
yeah.
City Marathon.
Oh my goodness. I think out of all of the world marathons, it's the hilliest, if not the second hilliest course. It might be between Sydney and New York in terms of
Wow.
elevation gained, but it is the hardest, if not the second hardest, major
Wow.
marathon. So I think coupled with like the elevation gain and me not going on a long run beyond like 20, 22 miles during my training block, the IT band syndrome came right back during the race,
Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
so unfortunate. If you've ever felt IT band syndrome,
Hmm.
it's a pain that, like, yes, you can fight through pain, but this type of pain almost locks your leg where you can't like really bend it. So you're almost like limping on that side of the leg.
Yep.
So thankfully, I think through my training, I was able, like, the IT band wasn't as bad as I've experienced it in the past. So I was able to power through it. It just really sucked that I got it right at the halfway mark, which was also very
Hmm.
odd. Like
Hmm.
13.1 miles. I've done that without a sip of water. I've done that like jet lagged in Korea. Like I've done it so many times. So it was such a weird moment for the IT band to come through. And I think that had
Hmm.
to do with like the insane amount of elevation gain in the first 13 to 14 miles.
Oh yeah, I could imagine because yeah, running relatively flat versus then adding in elevation gain is definitely a lot different, and it engages, I think, the glutes and around into those IT bands and your calves too. So
Yeah.
I could imagine that that played into it heavily. The mileage is one thing, but yeah, elevation gain is a total another piece to the equation. And do
Yeah.
you know what is the total elevation gain? I don't know anything about the major courses out there.
I think the total elevation gain is close to 8 or 900 feet.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. And
Hmm.
it's 5 bridges that we have to cross. And,
Wow.
the first three, well, the first and the third are the craziest. The first is the Verrazano. So you're starting literally at the base of the Verrazano Bridge. So you're going
Oh man,
about a
right.
mile, exactly, just right into it. Like we're
Hmm.
not playing any games. You're just going a mile just straight up. But what goes up must come down. So coming down into Brooklyn is just a fantastic route. And then around like
Hmm.
mile 15, we're going over the Queensboro Bridge, which also is a very high elevation. But the weird thing about that bridge is that it's dead silent. There's
Hmm.
no one spectating, so it's just all the runners
Oh.
kind of psyching each other up. Um, and towards the end, you start hearing the roar of the crowd come back when you're heading back into Manhattan. But yeah, a lot of
Wow.
elevation gain because of the bridges. I don't really remember any flat part of the course. It was always either
Wow.
a very steep hill or steep downhill, or just kind of these rolling up and down
Hmm.
moments throughout the entirety of the race, really. So it was
Oh
really
my
tough. It's really
goodness.
tough. I think
That
I think
is
I saw I think I saw a stat where it says like the professional, like the elite athletes that go to actually race the New York City Marathon. I think on average their pace is like, and I forget how many minutes slower, but like a noticeable amount of minutes slower than their usual marathon
wow.
pace. Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, I never would have imagined that. You know, when I think of New York City, you think of just kind of downtown Manhattan and all the grid. And so it's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, that doesn't seem like a ton of elevation change. But yeah, when you start throwing in bridges that are a couple miles long and there's an apex on that, and then yeah, through the other boroughs and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
What
yeah,
a
going back to like the KPI stuff. So all that said, with the not unexpected, but just the unfamiliarity of like running that type of elevation,
yeah.
I think the lack of volume and just kind of my overall like running history,
Hmm.
I got hit with IT band around 13.1, and at that moment,
Hmm.
me knowing IT band syndrome, I knew I had to quickly just either fight through the pain and try to hit my goal, which was sub 4 hours.
Okay.
And so I tried to fight through it, and I did fight through it for like the next 11 miles. But then after
Mm.
I was fighting through that, I think I was compensating it by the way that I was running. So my form started changing, which then
Mm.
made my foot really, really inflamed. Like I literally thought of like it was fractured, like I had a stress fracture. It was that type of
Ah,
pain.
man.
And so about like the 21, 22 mile mark, I was
Mhm.
like, let's change the goal. We're not hitting sub 4 at this point. Let's just try to finish at a reasonable rate. Like let's run as much as we can. If I need to walk, I don't want to like have a massive injury. So let's be
Mm.
okay with walking, but just keep moving forward and finish at
Mhm.
a respectable time. So I had to make that little quick switch on my ultimate goal, which is okay. Um, there's
Oh, yeah.
always the next race. And yeah, I ended up crossing the finish line running, which I always wanted to do, and not just like walk through the finish.
Yeah.
Finished at 4 hours, 30 minutes, and
Nice.
10 seconds.
Amazing. Hey, that's all that counts. And yeah, coming in running, that always feels so good. And just finishing it and going through that, there's so many parallels that we've talked about between fitness and events and things like that, where it parallels business and life. And one, I had posted a little while back on LinkedIn about this, where it's like, planning is so important, but then the actual plan, like it just never goes as planned when you get into the actual event or whatever it is that you're doing. It kind of goes out the window. And it's just like that planning is the most important part. And then adjusting course when you're actually in kind of the battle or in the project or in the event. And sometimes you have to just be okay with um, changing course and getting making sure like your overall high objective is and like kind of your intent is satisfied, right? So it's like you have a goal and that's great and a plan, but then sometimes you get hit with something and it's like, okay, what's my actual overarching objective here for personal achievement and fulfillment? It's like, okay, finish the race running and on a respectable time. And um, so yeah, huge accomplishment. That's awesome. Thanks for walking us through that. And I was yeah, it's energizing just listening to you kind of recap that and where things were happening and yeah, learning more about like the New York City Marathon, which is that's super interesting to learn more about.
Yeah, man. Like you're absolutely right. And I think that's something that we talked about in the last episode, if I'm not mistaken, where like it's okay to it's encouraged to set very lofty goals that
Mm.
you almost know aren't achievable. Because when you're striving for something so great and almost so like pie in the sky, what you end up with is still such an incredible accomplishment. Um, and yeah, going back to what you said around like, you can plan all you want, but you can't really predict what's going to happen on the day of a race or a presentation or a big meeting. Um, and you're absolutely right. Like I planned so much. It was obsessive. It was almost obsessive planning. Like, the carb loading to, counting the carbs all the way to like minute by minute. What do I want to do for 5 hours leading up to the race? Like, listen to all of these previous runners giving their advice and tips. Like, I thought I planned as much as possible, but that all went out the door right when I got, either injured or I realized this first bridge is just ridiculous.
Oh my
And
gosh.
you almost, I remember thinking to myself, like right as I took my first steps of the race, um, I just told myself, like, let's just hold on to one thought the whole time. And it was so unrelated to running. And I just kept telling myself, just keep pushing. Like that was my mantra because like, if I can do this, and it's such a simplified and probably not very realistic or true saying, but I just kept telling myself, like, if I can do this, I can do anything. If I can do this, I can do anything. Just kept pushing myself, and nothing that I thought about in terms of my plan for the day ever came into my mind. Like it just went completely out the door. And the last thing that I'll say is experience is the greatest teacher, man. Now that
Mm.
I've done it once, if I had to do it again, man, there's a lot of things that I'll change, from training to nutrition to the day of, like, um, yeah, I think experience is the greatest teacher, and that you know is true it's true in the sense of like this, but it's so true in so many other ways in life and in business as well.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is such a good segue because it's actually a thought that has come up a lot over the last few weeks as we've been this week actually finishing up week 2 of our 8-week AI accelerator program, which has been awesome. It's been such a great experience and really enjoying teaching and energized by it and really collaborating with all the people in the program. And the thing I keep telling myself working with others and even internally is that notion of experience is kind of invaluable, and going through and doing something once or twice you really learn the process. And I've really been trying to focus on the process, because when you're integrating AI into your life and your business, especially on the business side, it is so much about the process that you use to work every single day and reprogramming that and really understanding like what are as an individual, what are the things that I do every single day, what are the systems that I have that I may not even realize that I have. They're kind of they're habitual really. And you have to kind of start thinking like that systems and that methodology, because when you do that, you can then start saying like, okay, where does AI make sense to fit in, and where can it accelerate and help me? And then if you want to get even further into it of like, okay, we're going to automate this and maybe sprinkle in some AI inside of that automation, you can like want everybody that I talk to, like you can really want to automate. Like that's the cool, like sexy thing right now. But at the end of the day, it's like you can't automate chaos. And so you actually have to understand like what you're doing. And for me, going through and building the curriculum and doing all this, I couldn't just start out with an automated system to build out my curriculum. I have to do it once and then I have to do it twice and I have to say, oh, what worked, what didn't work, and then start realizing, okay, where am I spending a lot of time on that's not value add, but I'm just processing and doing a lot of manual kind of work, administrative work. Okay, that's a good candidate to try and figure out if I can prompt AI to help me get it into a better format so that it's less friction going into our repository and things like that. And so as I've been doing that, it's like, man, the experience you get after doing something once and then doing it a second time, and it just compounds. And then for me, I think I love like the concept of threes, like three of anything. So it's like if I do something three times, after that third time, I feel like, okay, I've got it mapped in my mind well enough that I can now start to do one of two things. You can delegate it to somebody else, or now a lot of times it's delegated to AI. And that would include maybe automating it. But it's just incredible that you how important it is as you go and do something, kind of running through your brain like, what am I actually doing? Because yeah, I just have had so many conversations, and we have lots of survey results and things like that where it's like, what's the number one thing you're most interested in doing? It's like automation. I want to automate all my work. I want to automate it. It's like that is a great goal, and like I think that looks and sounds really awesome, but when you get down to actually mechanically doing that, you have to do a lot of process mapping and figuring out like, are you actually doing it the most efficient way first? Like there's a lot of steps involved in that, and we've actually been that's a big part of our curriculum is like base skill set, but then also figuring out your workflow so that you can strategically start integrating it instead of just overarching kind of throwing a bunch of mud at the wall and seeing what sticks.
I can't imagine how complex these processes are like for engineers. Like as you were going through that, like that saying of can't automate chaos. To me, like I started off with like the simplest of tasks. As an example, like I literally always have like piles of physical receipts that I get
Hmm.
from like doing X, Y, and Z. And as a solo entrepreneur, those receipts are very valuable. Like we need to take, we need to record those. Um, and I remember I would spend so much time going through each of them, putting it into a spreadsheet. Um, but now leveraging AI, it's been so much easier. I can spend literally 5 minutes taking pictures of all of them, putting into a custom GPT, and it's done. That process is very simple to me and is not very chaotic. You, as someone who's been, doing engineering work for over a decade, it might seem simple to you, a lot of these processes, but I'm sure as you're like teaching new folks and you're learning about what their processes are like internally or lack thereof, like how do you manage that conversation of like maybe simplifying their process, um, to be able to identify what is like what part of their process right now can be automated versus not, like how, like I could see from an engineer's perspective who's part of your course being so overwhelmed at trying to automate everything because it is so chaotic. Is there a way that like you've distilled it down to a way that they are now not so fearful or just overwhelmed by this idea of automating a process that might be very chaotic currently?
Yeah, definitely. There's a couple main points and steps there, and we really take a we've established the curriculum and the process that we take with whether it's in our training course or just working with clients one on one. It's really about crawl, walk, run, sprint. As I was learning AI and integrating it into my business, like that was the theme, this evolution kind of and growth that came to mind of like, there are some instances where, yeah, you could have a really narrow use case like a voice agent for a B2C business who, like, you're a plumber or whatever it is. And it's like, you just need somebody to answer the phone for you. There are some rare instances where, like, plugging that particular thing in makes sense. But I think that's more of the rarity. Whereas if you start really from the ground up and build what we call foundations and then keep stacking on top of that, it takes that overwhelm out. And that's really one of the big drivers of why I went into AI enablement and education, is because I was sitting there completely overwhelmed, being like, "Oh my gosh, these all these other companies are going to automate everything, and they're going to have their agents and all this." And I was just like, my mind was kind of like, was exploding with like, how do I even get there? And I was very fortunate to get a mentor and into different training programs and masterminds where ultimately we started breaking it down into much simpler, stepwise, sequential build skill set building. And all that being said, it's like our course, the first like half of the course, we're getting into more kind of advanced use cases, but we're not even like talking or introducing automations yet. Like, we are just like fundamental skills. You need to understand the core three pieces, the core three ingredients, which we just went over around building an AI system. So you got prompts, you've got your knowledge base, and then your instructions or your custom instructions. And it's like, we have to really get those fundamental skill sets down before we start talking about other things, because if we just go to the other things, then they're not really getting transferable skills that they could then build upon with their own knowledge or their own team. You know, you're just kind of giving them fish instead of teaching them how to fish and then giving them a fishing pole and showing them how to use it. So that's the approach we take in that evolution. And so for any business has a lot of complex systems, I'll tell you what, because it's not just engineering. In some of my mastermind groups, there are people who have something that you might think is simple, like graphic design for t-shirts and wearables and things, and you'd be like, oh, that seems like a pretty simple process. Well, there was an example recently where the owner was talking about how they take in their quote form and convert that over into or their intake form into an actual quote or a proposal. And it's like, you know, a huge table of pricing and size and what type of print you're putting it on, what type of t-shirt. And so things start to get really complex really fast. And the way that we handle that, no matter really what I would say, no matter what business you're in, is um, the way to handle that is really to start breaking things down into really manageable chunks. So, kind of figuring out how to eat the elephant. You can't eat the whole thing at once. We just break it down into small, so that way you start stacking quick wins and you start understanding where it can fit. And the approach that we get into in the second half of the course is using AI to actually be our business process mapping tool, kind of our workflow analyst, and step us through questions, because everybody's got a process. It's a matter of extracting it out of their head, because 99% of the time, um, people do things and they don't have an SOP, a standard operating procedure, or a checklist. Like, they don't have it pulled up right next to them as they're doing it. It's just they've done it so many times that either they don't need it or they never made one because it's in their mind. So we extract that out using AI. And the fun part is we can then use AI to create a process flow map of what they're doing right now. And then once you have that out on paper, the unlock happens pretty quickly, because it's like, oh, okay. Then we can just take that and run it through using like Lean, Six Sigma, process optimization tools to streamline. And only after we've done that to kind of eliminate waste and like get it to the most efficient point possible can we then start looking at, like, okay, what steps in the process would potentially be good fits for AI. And so, I mean, if you're not doing that process, it really, you're going to waste a lot of time and effort and money. Because if you have some a lot of these other consultants come in and give you an AI solution, they're basically going to stack AI on top of a pile of garbage, and or they're just going to make it up, and so you're going to be left with almost a worse, like an exponentially worse pile of garbage because the AI will just keep running and doing, like, it'll produce so much for you, but if you, it's kind of garbage in, garbage out, and so the way again in that evolution for us is, let's first map out what we've got. You kind of have to survey and assess what you've got before you start thinking about integrating AI and then stacking automation and then maybe even making something like an end-to-end agent that could do the whole workflow for you.
It's so interesting. I remember when I went through that similar process, maybe not as intentional as you are with teaching this approach. Um, but I remember, I was spending so much time on putting proposals together.
Mm-hmm.
And as I remember one time, I was sitting on like maybe four proposals that I needed to do over the course of like 2 weeks, which in terms of hours, I think a proposal might take anywhere between 6 to 8 hours.
Yeah, definitely.
So if you're sitting on four of those, like that's kind of your full
Hmm.
time job for the week. And,
Yeah.
that means I can't get to client work. I can't grow my business. Like there's a lot of like cascading effects. And I remember just like putting a Word document together of like what is the process. And the only reason why I did that was because I didn't want to keep thinking about what the next part in that
Mm.
step was to, finish this proposal. And then as I was putting this proposal like process doc together, I started to realize like, oh, step two, I could use AI to get this output. Step six, I can use AI for this output. So it sounds like that's kind of what you're teaching, and I almost wish did something like that a lot earlier. But there's such a big time saving, and then we talk about this like literally every episode, and we are living proof of it. I can now put a proposal together in like 3 hours, which is so much faster than the previous 6 to 8 hours that it took. And now it's time for me to like find some time to create similar efficiencies in other areas of these kind of chaotic processes that I have. Um, one of which is like, now that I have an employee or a contractor, um, there's process docs that I put together to help onboard.
Hmm.
But I think there's more automation that I can build, not automation, but just AI moments within that process that I can leverage AI to make that process even more efficient. And it's this, I guess once you do it once, you kind of just start looking at other areas that
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Big
add
time.
AI into. But yeah, I think the way that you're approaching it, it makes it so much more approachable, you know,
Yeah.
that approach of like creating that foundation, learning how to prompt, having a prompt library, outlining what your process is first, and then identifying what part of the process, even if it's not the full thing, but just moments and times where you can leverage AI to make a step within the process a little bit quicker. Um, yeah, I think it's such an amazing course that you're putting together right now. And um, you're 2 weeks in right now. Are these like practitioners? Are they team managers? Are they business owners? Is it kind of across the gamut?
Yeah, we've got a really diverse group. It's amazing. So we have good breadth and depth within businesses. We've got single operator solopreneurs. We've got up to representatives from companies that are in the hundreds of employees. And the beautiful part about it is the foundational skills that we build and the tools that we build, because each week we are pretty much making 1 to 2 custom, what would be a custom project, but most people in our space are actually inside Copilot. And for better or worse, Microsoft decided to call it Copilot agents. A little bit of heartburn with that, but it'll be what it'll be. It's basically a custom GPT. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe they were forward thinking because they are adding additional layers in there. And I'll actually talk about that in a minute here. But the foundational skill set applies to everybody. We've got different roles. We've got finance, operations, like I said, solopreneur who does everything. We've got marketing, business development, all of that. And the amazing part is once you learn these fundamental skills, the frameworks, the ingredients, the recipes, you can then adapt that to your day to day. And it's so fun seeing everybody get out of week one the wins that they have of like, oh, yeah, by the way, I went, did data analysis on a spreadsheet, or I'm working on my first co-pilot agent as like a knowledge hub essentially. And like they're actually building it side by side with us. And it's not as much of just like a training as it is a collaborative workshop experience to build those muscles. And it's a fast tracked way to cut through all the noise and just start building pretty quickly out of day one, week one, day one. And so that's been amazing to have such a diverse representation. And I've seen that over and over again that like, there is no role, there's no place in business where you would say I'm not going to use AI in some form or fashion. That would be a very rare occurrence because it can just augment whatever you're doing and accelerate that to some extent. Um, Now, one other thing that you said earlier is about like, oh, I have all these other workflows or processes in my business that I need to figure out how to integrate AI. And that's a big one where when companies and individuals are in this like piloting phase, you kind of just go after the most tangible, easiest thing. And honestly, it's crazy because proposals comes up almost 100% of the time as the
Really?
target. I think it's because it's a repeatable process. You have a
Mhm.
template, you've done lots of them, so you have good data, and a foundation, and the process is pretty well defined. Um, So you can do that. And I think that's worthwhile to do as a pilot. But once you start figuring out, okay, and you build your muscles and you're kind of at the stage where you're at, it's okay, now how do we go about systematically picking the workflows that are going to give us the best ROI? Because with each of those, we use the ICE matrix where it's the impact, your confidence, and the amount of effort it's going to take to do it. And so with those variables, you can kind of score and rank your standard workflows or most of your workflows and map it out to kind of see like, oh, okay, here are the ones that are highest impact, lowest effort. Let's go after those first. And that's a way that people will sort and rank them. But then the one thing that we do different is we take that methodology and we also use what's called theory of constraints for your business, which we've talked about a lot. And that's based on a book called The Goal by E.M. Goldrat. And it's a pretty fun read if you're into manufacturing because it's based on a manufacturing facility and a fictitious character who's a plant manager trying to optimize his plant, but the principles all apply to any business and a lot of things in life, really. And so that coupled with a strategy that we have where you break your business into really three parts to keep it simple: marketing, sales, and then delivery. And everything that's not marketing and sales ends up in delivery. And you look at those three areas and you say, okay, for my business to grow, and the whole point of the goal is like the goal of a business is to make money and to keep making more money. Like fundamentally, that is the most boiled down point of a business. Because if you're not making money, like you don't really have a business, you can't do anything. So in that, it's like, okay, look at those three areas and they each have a set amount of capacity. And it's like, okay, where is the bottleneck of those three areas in your business? And you need to pick the one that you would say like, okay, if we're marketing constrained, that means I don't have enough leads and we're not converting those leads into RFPs or RFQs. But and so a lot of times that probably for a lot of small businesses, that probably is the limiting factor and the bottleneck. So
Yep.
don't worry about fixing anything else. Go fix that first. And then what will happen is if you are limited in sales next, then what will happen is you'll have so many qualified leads and so many RFPs that you'll actually break your sales organization because you'll probably have proposals that are like on the back burner and you're not getting them out fast enough, or you're just not getting to them. So then you keep marketing going where you've got it, and then you go say, okay, sales is next. And you maybe you add another salesperson or you add AI in there to get that proposal through faster. And then once you get that tuned up, then you're going to start converting more of those. You have more proposals going out. If you have just a set conversion rate, then you're going to get more volume of work into delivery or manufacturing. And so then from there, you have to focus all your attention only on delivery. And then you keep iterating through that sequence to grow. And we basically take that theory of constraints and match it up with the ICE ranking. So that way, not only are you picking the easiest kind of ones, the highest impact, easiest ones, but you're also picking ones that are going to benefit the bottom line of the business or grow top line or do both. Because otherwise, you could be optimizing, you could be using AI on processes that are not your bottleneck, and that's just a waste of resources and time. And so that's really the unique spin that we have on it, that people have a significant advantage leveraging this methodology. And again, we're using AI to do all of it, so it seems complex, but it's really no more than just interviewing people who do this every single day and then using AI to process it and map it out and then find where you can go and make those improvements.
Like that was amazing, Shane, because I was listening to you speak there through the ears of like a solo entrepreneur, um, a glorified freelancer. Like, let's call it that. There are probably so many folks out there who, especially in the marketing field, with rounds and rounds of rifts and layoffs in the last 3 to 5 years, have pursued a career as a consultant or a freelancer. I've had, you know, um, I've had the pleasure of having people to lean on, you included, but other folks who have pursued this career before I did, and I've leaned on them heavily to realize that it's not just about how good you are at what you do. For you to keep your business going, you're going to have to focus on sales and marketing. Like, it's a never ending game, especially with sales and marketing. Because folks like me, we've come from a delivery background. We've always been executional. We've always been strategic, but we've never
Yep.
done sales and marketing to keep things going.
Yep.
And as you were saying that, what I'm so glad that you mentioned this one thing. As you're going from one problem to the next, it's not just about you focusing your attention to the next thing, but leaving that bit that you're working on in a better place with a better person or AI feature to be able to handle how you improved that function of your business. For me, in the beginning, like 12 to 16 months, that's exactly what I was doing in terms of like fixing a problem, going to the next problem. But the rate in which those problems popped up got even faster because I was bringing in more deals, I was executing on more deals, and doing more of everything caused these problems to pop up even faster. And what I'm glad that you said was, you know, as you fix a problem and you move on to the next, you either leave that with someone else to handle the process and the system that you built, and then you'll come back and keep improving it, maybe with an additional headcount or with some upskilling, whatever the case may be. You can't just leave it after you fixed it. You have to leave it with someone responsible for that task, which sounds so silly and obvious, but as a solo entrepreneur, and a lot of freelancers out there can probably resonate with this. Um, and I'm not saying you can't just be a freelancer and have a thriving business. Of course, you're gonna have to find other ways to get deals fed through to you.
Hmm.
But if you're wanting to build something on your own, where you're building your own pipeline, you're delivering on that pipeline, you do need to figure out a way that all areas of your business can be managed by some sort of headcount, whether it's fractional or
Mhm.
an AI solution. So
Oh,
important.
yeah, yeah, and kind of what you were saying there. Two things. One is I've noticed as when you're starting a business, and maybe even especially the first time you're starting a business, there is this cycle that you go through that a lot of people and even like coaches out there I think sometimes forget about in the early days is if you even if you just like simplify it into a circle and you have marketing, sales, delivery, and then you kind of just keep going in that wheel, the rate at which you change, or like at the rate at which your bottleneck is in one of those areas can change like in the course of a day. Because when you start out and it's just you, and maybe you have thought about some subcontracted help, some 1099, whatever the case is, or you do have capacity on your team, it's like one day you could get two proposals on the same day, and all of a sudden marketing isn't your bottleneck, sales isn't your bottleneck anymore, delivery is, right? And so you focus on that. And then literally you could do all that work. And then at the moment you finish that work, your marketing pool has dried up and your lead pool has dried up. So then it's like you got to jump back to marketing. And then all of a sudden you'll get avalanched with 10 proposals all in the same week or something, and then it's like sale. And so for me, the way in my mind, if I were to describe it to myself going back in time or somebody who's just trying to get started out, is you're in this like spiral that you'll keep going up and making progress, but you're always in that spiral. And not a bad spiral, but it's just like it's almost like a spring that's a conical spring that's going up. And it's also growing in diameter as you go up, because the time between those, as you get more projects and people involved, will be a little bit slower pace. But man, when you're starting out as, like you said, a freelancer on your own, you are just like in this washing cycle all the time. And then eventually, like you said, you build enough people and team and systems and you integrate AI to where you get some breathing room before, and then you have enough continuous momentum to be like, okay, I know that marketing is our problem and I can now go dedicate myself 100% to that. And everything else in the background will keep running. And so I can go fix that system. But you don't really have a complex interactive, um, I guess it's not even the complex interactive system. It's more of like the momentum of the system to sustain you as you go fix these areas and grow. But like that will be your forever sequence. And I know typically businesses will cap out at like somewhere in this $1 to $5 million, typically like 2 million. Small businesses will just cap out. And because the reason is because the owner, you can build enough systems and still be very involved in them at that $2 million mark, and you can have employees. But to get out of that, you have to remove yourself and not work in the business, but you have to work on it. And that is where you can start to look at your business in these three parts or three funnels, if you will, and then find that bottleneck and then go put the right people in place with the right systems to continue to grow and scale. And that's just the thing that came to my mind there, of like you just feel like you're in this washing machine in the early days, and it gets a little bit more time before things cycle over, but you're in that cycle. And in the early days, it's like from marketing to sales to delivery, and you're back again, and you got to keep going.
I am firmly in that cycle right now. Q4 is historically the busiest time for me.
Nice.
Um, and even just like in the SEO industry, I think Q4 is always nutty.
Hmm.
Um, but my goodness, just from a sales perspective, we had a new client that kicked off, two contracts that were just signed, three proposals in the work, and now I'm having to renew all of my clients, all within like the next 30 days. Um, and so I firmly feel that I wouldn't even say early on. It really depends on like where you are in the journey of like growing your business, right? Like I always find that there's this there's always these moments in time, at least for my business, there's these moments in time where like you're so overwhelmed, not even from one function of your business, like everything's pulling for your time and attention. And, as long as you can get through that and do it in the right way, as far as like building something that can be managed by someone else or through processes that can be handled in a more efficient manner, you'll come out of that, in a place where you're leaving the business in a much better spot. But man, when you're in it, it's one of the like it really tests your resilience. Um, you've got to come back to like your why. We used to talk about that a lot in like the earlier episodes, but like, what is your why? Like, what always helps you get out of bed to continue on and continue pressing on. Um, so don't lose sight of that, guys. Like, whatever your why is, write it down somewhere. Have your goals nearby so you can read through your goals when the time gets tough, because it'll always be tough, but like how we handle those tough times and make it an opportunity to make the business better.
Hmm.
That's kind of the journey of an entrepreneur. That's one of the big, one of the many journeys of being an entrepreneur is fixing problems and making things a little bit better.
Yeah. Oh, and that's so true. And in my business coaching program, the statement is like, if you run a business, that business will always be broken. And that's a hard one for me as an engineer to digest and really live by. And that's been probably one of the biggest transformations for me, um, over the course of building Obnova is, as an engineer, everything that I've ever done is to design something so that it would never break before it even went into use. Um,
Wow.
so the notion of putting something out there, well, two things. One is putting something out there before it's even built and then building it once somebody buys it is crazy. But that's what you have to do. And then the second part is, not only are you going to sell it, but the business that is going to deliver on it will be fundamentally broken as it goes to do that. And so that's like a really wild mindset to be in as a business. And I think you could in theory do it in a really safe, strategic, conservative way, but and maybe the amount or like the level of breakage in the business is very minimal and manageable, but all that translates to is just like a very slow scale or even just like a slow linear growth. But if you're really trying to take like 10x leaps and exponential growth, um, you are going to break a lot of things in your business very quickly. Because if you even think about it, like if you're like, oh, next year we're going to try and double our revenue, well, that means everything in your business will break in 6 months, because you'll have to do that because you're going to max it out. And so if you're going for 4x growth, every 3 months, you're going to be kind of turning over a new form of your business and fixing it. And that is, I think, definitely, if I was to distill it, like entrepreneurship is two parts. It's like, yeah, problem solving and fixing, and then it's also the biggest self development endeavor that you could have, maybe besides kids. To me, they're kind of like both up there, just in different. The rankings are different, but they're like almost the same level, because you're going to completely expose everything, every weakness, everything that you're not good at, things that you don't like doing, is just exposed, and it will be exposed, and there's no way of getting around it. And you can't, in corporate world, you can slough in and you can have a bad day and you can just kind of coast, or you could take, there's a lot of areas to hide. But when you're out on your own and it's do or die, there's no hiding. There's no hiding behind it.
I always wonder what that phrase was like. Yeah, I decided to go strike out on my own. I've heard it so many times, and the phrase isn't for when you strike out, or it's not if you strike out. It's when you strike out every single day. What do you do after that? You're absolutely right, man. Everything is always broken. you're fixing what's most important, and trying to find a little bit of sanity in the things that are truly real, like family and like health and all
Yeah.
that stuff, of course. But it's a fun, just crazy disaster of a game that we're playing here, but it's fun.
Yeah.
There's definitely moments that make you realize that you made the right choice in striking out on your own.
100%. Yeah. And I think to tie that into a little bit of like the why behind it and the spiritual piece to it all is really coming into alignment and finding like your zone, what they call the zone of genius, from the book The Big Leap. And it's really this area in life where time stands still, and when you're working on it, you don't actually feel, it doesn't feel like work. You're just kind of in this flow, this zone. And not saying that you have to go out on your own to find that, but no matter where you are in life, if you really strive to find that and you find that zone, it's super powerful, and
Yeah.
things will start happening in your life at that exponential rate when you're in that zone. So I'm always, yeah, encourage people to, whether it's within a bigger organization or going out on your own, there's so much to be said about chasing that and kind of that meaning of life as opposed to just clocking in and clocking out. And you do have a choice. It just, that choice stands on the other side of fear in almost all cases.
Awesome, man. Look, I don't know a better spot to end that discussion on. But before we disband, I think you have a marathon coming up, don't you?
Yeah, great. This is coming full circle. Like, what an amazing conversation here. Yeah. So, from you recapping the finish of your marathon, for me getting ready, heading in on Sunday into mine, and we'll see. The weather looks interesting. I think we're going to have deal with some rain, so that'll be a little bit different. I have done some running in the rain, but yeah, 26.2 in wet shoes and socks will be different. But a lot of it, yeah, like you said, comes back to the mind is very powerful, and the body can tolerate a lot more than we give ourselves credit for. So I'm excited for the opportunity. At least it's going to be, it looks like decently warm in the 50s, maybe even 60. So it'll be completely manageable. And yeah, I'm excited to just get into it. I will use headphones, and I'm a podcast person. So I use running for a lot of self-reflection, self-improvement, business, all that stuff, a lot of AI while running. So that'll be my go-to, and just kind of get in the zone and cruise through the course. And for me, I'm going from Allentown to Easton, and I'm excited for it. I'm just ready to kind of get in and get in the zone. That's where I like to live.
So you're man, I'm so excited for you. What time do you start on Sunday?
Our start
Is it
time is
early?
8 a.m. on
8 a.m.
Sunday.
Gotcha. And you're in the taper phase right now, starting to think about carb loading the last couple of days here?
Yep. Taper phase. I'm not doing anything too crazy. Like you said, I've done some high teens and 20s for runs and have kind of that set up. I would say the thing is probably mostly around dress right now, looking at the weather and trying to play temperature with rain and all of that. But like I said, I did do some runs in the rain this year, just to, in case that were to be a situation. So I'm excited for that. And yeah, from a nutrition standpoint and physical standpoint, just taper down. We did what I do, like 2 to 3 today. Tomorrow I'll just do like a light jog for a mile or so. A lot of stretching and rolling and getting ready, and then also over these next couple of days, ramping up a ton of, a little bit of protein, kind of standard amount of protein, and then yeah, just a lot of simple, easy carbs, which I've been integrating a lot more of, it would be fun to talk nutrition, because I think a whole episode on nutrition would be fun. Not even from
Yeah.
a fitness standpoint, but just from my thoughts on nutrition over the last couple of years. Because Mary's made a huge effort in that area, and we've made a lot of changes. So that would be fun to talk about. Might add some value for others. But yeah, we're in that taper phase, and 8 a.m. Sunday. Weather, and it's not going to get canceled. That's for sure. I don't think so. We're going to be running. Might be a little wet, but yeah, I'm excited to just kind of get in the zone.
Awesome, man. I can't wait. I'm not going to ask you what your goals are. I think that's a cardinal sin to ask someone ahead of a race. So I look forward to um, a similar kind of post-mortem reaction session when we meet again in a couple of weeks. But man, ahead of that, I just pray that you have no injuries, that you're able to smile throughout the entirety of the race, and you just really enjoy it. You put so much effort into this, um, injuries included. You know, you had to bounce back from. You know, you had to bow out from another a race that you wanted to do because of the injury. So this is a pretty big moment, and you deserve everything that you feel, all of the applause and the spectators that are going to be there to cheer you on. Man, just take it all in. It's going to be a special day, and best of luck, man.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Again, if you ever need to reach out, you can always hit us up on socials, especially Instagram, Growth Intake Podcast, and growthintakepodcast at gmail.com, or I'm at shane.chalupa at obnoga.com. How about you,
And
Sam?
I'm at Sam at KeyRiseConsulting.com.
Nice. Yeah. Thanks everybody.
All
Enjoy.
right. Take care.